The Call of Duty Zombies Iceberg. This is some... Wait a minute. We've done this before, haven't we? The Call of Duty Zombies Iceberg number 2. It is here ever since I made the first one. Not only did I really enjoy researching the iceberg, taking a trip to old memory lane, just talking about some COD zombie stuff, you know, some really well-known information, some really weird, obscure stuff. I mean, some of the entries on that last iceberg were... they were pretty weird. I enjoyed editing it, putting it all together, researching it, and I don't know if you noticed, but it seemed like a lot of people enjoyed watching the video just as much as I loved making it. Even Lex reacted to the video with his stream. Jason Blundell was fired. For zombies, Jason Blundell had mysterious... And although the first iceberg did conclude really nicely, it was all wrapped up into a nice bow, I just wanted to do another one when I saw this iceberg chart here, because I was just left wanting more. This iceberg was posted a year ago on the COD Zombies subreddit by Agrobot, and this iceberg is a pretty wild one, so strap in. And for a quick rule of thumb before we start, any entries that were on the last iceberg that I covered that are on this one, I'm gonna skip over them, but however, if they are something that I got wrong in the last video, which you guys corrected me on, then I'll be sure to clarify it when we get there. If you want to add any more information onto some of these entries, or there's anything I got wrong, then just throw me a comment down below. I'm also going to be using the perk system that I used in the last iceberg video, where depending on the entry, I'll display a certain number of perks out of 5, and if all 5 perks are present on a certain entry, then I'm 100% confident in what I'm saying to be true, and if it's just one perk, then it's just going to be a complete guess. And one more thing, if you don't know what an iceberg chart is, I'll explain now. But if you already know, then you can skip to this timestamp here on screen to start the video. An iceberg chart is a series of rabbit holes, trivia, and facts about a game, or anything, but in this context it's gaming, and this is a Call of Duty Zombies iceberg, obviously. And at the top of the chart are some very common and well-known things about COD Zombies, aka the tip of the iceberg. And then the further down we go as the list goes on, holds more obscure, less known, and sometimes more creepy information about the topic. And then said information is split off into tiers corresponding to how well known the stuff on here is. Now that you're all filled in, if you find yourself enjoying this, then give the video a like and subscribe, grab a drink or a bite to eat, as we're about to take a deeper dive into the deep dark. Hidden radios. In most of the maps from the Call of Duty Zombies series, there are radios that are scattered all around the maps with recordings on them, and these are usually characters talking to one another that will shine a lot more context and light onto the story, especially the one of the map you're playing most of the time. And a lot of these radios being on maps add a lot of flavour to them, since if you can find them and you listen to them all, you'll be able to piece together what happened on the map and maybe a bit more about the larger story of zombies as a whole. And for anyone who wants to start radio hunting in zombies, I'm going to recommend starting off at World at War on Darius. The radios are pretty easy to find on that map, and the story they tell is nothing short of amazing. Pentagon test subjects. In the map 5, which is set in the Pentagon, you can see a pig suspended by rags in the laboratory, and it is still alive. It appears to have flies eating away at it, and it looks in pain. And it's made clear that this is one of the many things being experimented on within the map. Fun fact about the pig, by the way, you can actually choose to kill it and put it out of its misery. It all depends on your morality. You can also see many surgical tables with blood and pigs on them, and this implies that there have been lots of experimentation, and from what we can tell, the Pentagon made Nova 6 crawlers using this research and based off of Group 935's crawlers, which, if that isn't the biggest example of can I copy your homework, sure, but just change it a bit so the teacher doesn't notice, I don't know what is. To even further confirm that these are made from pigs, there is a blueprint you can find in Classified that shows the body structure of a Nova crawler, and next to it there is a pig. There's some genetic structure changes going on, and then there's the Nova 6 crawler as we know them at the bottom. So what this is saying is that the pigs go through some sort of genetic change, and they are then turned into these monsters. And from some little implications here and there, it seems as though Group 935 made the crawlers first as a result of a failed experiment, but then the Pentagon picked up this research, gave them some finishing touches, if that's how you want to phrase it, and enhance them via the use of the Nova 6 gas. So yeah, the reason the Nova 6 crawlers fart when you kill them is because of the Pentagon. That is the weirdest shit I've said all day. Shadowman controlled Richtofen, one of the more vague mysteries of zombies, so I'm surprised it is all the way up here. The Shadowman is a master of manipulation and managed to slither his way to gaining power via the summoning key, as we see in Shadows of Evil, until he gets game-ended in Revelations, via the most anticlimactic boss fight in the world. There's some really interesting dialogue that pulls the curtain back and reveals the relationship that Richtofen had with the Shadowman. As it turns out, Richtofen knew the Shadowman very well and are in fact more than friends. The Shadowman even says he is more like an apprentice to him, and this leads to the question, did he manipulate Richtofen, or was this more of a mutual relationship? Now, the other interpretation for this entry is that maybe the Shadowman actually physically controlled Richtofen's body and took over it, but I can't really see this being plausible since he had to manipulate and lie to the Shadows of Evil crew just to get the summoning key, when he could have just took over one of them and did it himself. Dr. Monty. Dr. Monty is the polar opposite of the Shadowman. Whilst the Shadowman is evil and cunning, Dr. Monty is another omnipotent being that at first appears to be on the side of Primus and is all for saving the universe, like an angel and devil type of dynamic. However, this ends up being far from true, and Dr. Monty honestly ends up being just as bad as the Shadowman, and only wants to have his perfect world, what we see at the beginning of Revelations, and so this then sets Primus up to try and get back in there and break that damn cycle. Don't worry though, we'll talk about that cycle later. Samantha's room. This was an OG Easter egg back in Black Ops 1, where on the map Kino de Toten, when you're done pack-a-punching and teleport back, there's a chance that you can teleport to Samantha's room. You'll be able to find a film reel there and play it in the projector, in said pack-a-punch area, but you're only in Samantha's room for a very brief amount of time, and it's pretty creepy being in there. One version of the room you can teleport into is fairly normal, although kinda eerie, and the other version of her room is covered in blood and has a red hue to it. It's all demonic and terrifying, and okay, maybe it's not that scary, but for a first time player this could definitely throw them off guard. The cycle. I told you we would cover it. The cycle is a huge deal in the zombie storyline, and to shorten it down, because oh my God, we could be here all day. The cycle in zombies is a continuous loop of events in which our characters find themselves stuck in whilst trying to fight off the undead. Every time Primus dies, which for those that don't know is the Origins version of Nikolai, Dempsey, Takio and Richtofen, the cycle will reset and they start back at Origins, with certain maps taking place because the Chronorium changes. And for those that don't know, the Chronorium is basically this magic book that appears to see into other timelines and has so much knowledge in it, and the cycle affects other timelines such as Mob of the Dead. The ending of Revelation sees Primus continuing the cycle, whereas Tag de Toten in Black Ops 4 sees the cycle being fully broken and stopped once and for all. Now, I think I did a pretty damn good job explaining that briefly just then, but the cycle goes much deeper than this, and this is quite a big rabbit hole, and it's really fun to look into, although it does tend to get a bit messy here and there. Nova Crawlers. The Nova Crawlers are a classic enemy in zombies history, and honestly resemble Gollum from Lord of the Rings, except Gollum doesn't let out a stinky ass fart when he dies. The Nova Crawlers, however, do. Now, the Nova Crawlers don't actually fart when they die, although that would be honestly really amusing. They just let out this huge green gas cloud of a chemical in the Black Ops 1 campaign known as Nova 6. If the player melee kills the Nova 6 crawlers, then they won't explode, which is a good reward for getting up close and personal, so you don't have to deal with the gas. However, if they are shot, then expect some gas up your nostrils. They have no eyes and a really creepy looking mouth, and they look really skinny and unsettling, and the way they move is pretty creepy as well. This is basically what I mentioned earlier on the Pentagon test subjects entry, but to conclude, there are more variants of these crawlers than just the Nova ones, such as the jumping jacks from Die Rise, teleporting ones in Moon, and the Nova 6 bombers in Alpha Omega. Help signs. There can be some unnerving graffiti wrote from chalk around the maps of zombies that spells out help. It's all jagged and ominous looking, and this was first seen in Nakden Toten on the help door, as the community calls it, which was the first ever zombies map. Based on what we know with the zombie story, it seems as though that these help signs were from Samantha. Main Easter eggs. Call of Duty Zombies is well known for its main Easter egg quests that are hidden within most maps, and these send the players on a long hunt of clue finding, trial and error, puzzle solving, and overall skill and survival, as well as map knowledge. Once the players solve the main Easter egg quest, it will essentially end the game in a more victorious way. Easter eggs have some really good story conclusions and setups for other maps that definitely make them worth doing. Some Easter eggs tend to be longer than others, some are shorter than others, some are ridiculously stupid and hard to find, and some were found within the first couple of hours of a map coming out, and some maps don't even have an Easter egg quest at all. Multiverse. The multiverse, much like the cycle, is a huge deal in the COD Zombie storyline. The multiverse is similar to the kind of thing with the Spider-Verse or Spider-Man No Way Home, which I went to watch recently and it was pretty good, in which there are different realities where different events can happen across a bunch of different timelines, and from what I can tell, this affects all characters in Zombies, like Primus, Ultimus, the Shadows of Evil and Mob of the Dead crew, Victus, and so on and so forth. Dr. Monty even mentions that Tank Dempsey holds the all-time record for one-arm push-ups, even in the universe where everyone only had one. So Dr. Monty is telling us that there is a universe where everyone only has one arm. I was about to say Zombies is the gift that keeps on giving, but considering Vanguard came out, it's not. But we even see these infinite possibilities in the music videos in Black Ops 3 Zombies, such as Primus failing, being killed by their Ultimus counterparts, or sometimes even turning on each other. Damn, those music videos were sad. Can we get an F for our lads Primus? Zombie containers. Now I know when you first hear that, you might think it's some weird Etsy product, but it's not. In Zombies, there are many Easter egg steps in both official and custom maps that require you to kill zombies near a container or urn or anything in between, and their souls will go into it in order to charge something up, and this has become a pretty infamous step because of how many times it has been used. Like, it is criminally overused. Maybe let's get some different Easter egg steps. That would be nice. Hellhounds. These are zombie dogs that come every 4 to 7 rounds and are super aggressive, but are overall classic Zombies enemies, much like the Nova Crawlers. When the round is completed, they'll drop a max ammo, and these were in fact made from Maxis and Richtofen experimenting on Samantha's pregnant dog Fluffy in Der Riese. She was teleported and came back zombified, which led to her giving birth to more Hellhounds, and this is a decent enough explanation as to why there are more of them when you play. The hardest iteration we've had of these are World at War. They were overly aggressive and could outrun the player, and considering it was only a 2-hit down back then, it was genuinely scary, especially when the fog covered the map and you heard the classic "fetch me their souls" at the beginning of each dog round. On some maps, Hellhounds would spawn alongside zombies at a certain round, and this really shook things up a bit and upped the stakes. Teddy bears. Teddy bears in Zombies have a huge connection to a character named Samantha Maxis. Samantha is the daughter of Ludwig Maxis, which, if you don't know, Maxis, alongside Richtofen and Group 935 as a whole, kinda did just a small oopsie, and they made the whole zombie thing happen. Like I said, just a small oopsie. Anyway, one thing led to another. She got teleported to Moon. She ended up taking control of the zombies. That was a whole thing that happened, and her calling card is a teddy bear. Samantha loved her stuffed animals, so it makes sense that if there's going to be any object to represent that she's watching over you as you're playing a map, it would be a teddy bear. Like I said a second ago, if there's a teddy bear on a zombies map you're playing, this is a good indicator that Samantha might be watching you, such as the 3 teddy bears in Ascension, or even when you spin the box one too many times and the box moves, because when that happens, you'll get a teddy bear instead of a weapon. She'll taunt you by laughing at you because you thought that the ray gun every time glitch was real and you were sat there in front of the box, crouching, proning, knifing it, shooting it, running out your room, doing 5 press-ups, going back in, spinning round in your chair, and then sitting back down. Don't worry, I thought it was real as well. Maybe if we try doing 6 press-ups instead of 5, and maybe shoot all 3 hinges, like, I don't know, maybe once more over, maybe then we'll get it, okay? We have to try it. Anyway, once Samantha's done dunking on you, she'll then move the box to a different location in the map, and essentially the more you play zombies, the more teddy bears you'll see. It's hard to ignore the significance of them. Perca-Colas. These are just the perks in the zombies universe: Juggernog, Quick Revive, Stamina Up, Speed Cola, Double Tap, and how could we ever forget Exo Health? Everyone, let's give it up for Exo Health, one of our favourite, most beloved perks. You know, I'm pretty sure I slammed on Exo Zombies in the last Iceberg. Sorry, no, I Exo slammed on Exo Zombies. Nice to know this is the beginning of a beautiful tradition. These perks were made by Group 935, although later on in Black Ops 3 Zombies, it's revealed that Monty actually made the perks, or at least nudged Group 935 in the right direction to make these perks. I do think that Monty is a pretty unreliable narrator and would definitely take credit for inventing something like them. But regardless, pretty cool reveal. These Perca-Colas come in a very wide variety of flavors, and when I say very wide variety, I mean very wide. Some of these Perca-Colas have been described to have some funky tastes to them, such as Quick Revive tasting like fish. Everybody dislikes the taste of Quick Revive except for Takio, which is honestly just really amusing because there's just always that one guy, and Takio is that guy. Stamina Up is said to have quite a sour taste. Double Tap is said to have a chewy taste according to Dempsey, which just sounds really gross. Deadshot Daiquiri, according to some characters, has a very sweet taste, resembling yogurt and strawberries. And a really interesting thing here is that Mule Kick is said to taste differently according to certain characters. So Tank Dempsey said it tastes like beer, but Takio says it tastes like cola, which seems to be implying that it may taste different depending on who's drinking the perk. Juggernog is said to be made with real eggs, and many characters do enjoy the taste of Jug. However, the Mob of the Dead crew and Primus don't really think about it in that way. And as for Speed Cola, it seems to be the most beloved perk out of all of them. However, it does a similar thing to Mule Kick, where it seems to be different depending on who's drinking it. In Buried, when Morrilton drinks the perk, he'll mention how it doesn't have any sugar or dairy in it. But in Origins, Dempsey will say that he can't remember the last time he's tasted sugar, with his rations barely being edible. And Richtofen even says that the main ingredient of Speed Cola can rot the consumer's mind, which is this why everyone likes the taste? Who's to say? But one more thing about perks that I think everybody can agree on here is that the perk jingles absolutely slap. Perk jingles are some of the best music to ever be composed in the whole world.
Rest in pieces, down for the count. No revival, you're bleeding out. Your epitaph says you died a wealthy man, but you could have it all come back. It's his master plan with tombstone, it's tombstone, it's tombstone.
There is a lot more I could say about perks, but this entry's gone on long enough. In short, perks are a really genuinely good staple in the Zombies universe, and it's safe to say that it wouldn't be the same without them. Die Glocke, or at least I think that's how it's pronounced. My knowledge of German mainly just comes from Zombies maps, so yeah. Anyway, Die Glocke was a top secret Nazi scientific experiment, and can I just say, it isn't a Zombies Iceberg unless one of these is mentioned. This was supposed to be a wonder weapon, also known as the Wunderwaffe. The Wunderwaffe. Oh my god, that's the thing from Zombies, the Zappy gun. Oh my, essentially they were basically trying to make crazy wonder weapons and play around with anti-gravity. They even tried to make something called a sun gun, which would reflect large amounts of sunlight onto Earth. The sun gun could burn down whole cities with sunlight, and that is just wild to me. I am so glad that that never got made, but the Nazis were in fact planning on making this, which I think we can all sigh in relief and say thank God that was never made. But it does sound like something that you would use in COD Zombies, right? It sounds like something Group 935 would have made. In Zombies, the Wunderwaffe DG2 is actually part of Die Glocke, with the DG literally standing for Die Glocke, as well as other things in Zombies that alludes to it being a part of this project, such as teleporters and other wonder weapons, etc. It's safe to say early Zombies like World at War, Black Ops 1 definitely did take inspiration from Die Glocke, which is just a wild rabbit hole of very scary Nazi experiments, considering what they were actually trying to achieve. You know, like I said earlier, a freaking sun gun. Luckily, this stuff was never further developed due to World War II ending, and I do love the idea that Zombies most definitely did take inspiration from Die Glocke and made really cool stuff like the Wunderwaffe. Fourth wall breaks. When playing as Tank Dempsey, sometimes he will say a quip that would talk directly to the player with some strange sense of self-awareness, which I always found amusing when I first heard it, and I still do now, with the famous quote from him being,
"Hey, player! Drop the chips and get me some ammo!
However, Misty is also able to break the fourth wall. And I'm going to throw this one out there right now. This doesn't mean that Misty and Dempsey are related. They can't be related. How would that even make sense? Anyway, moving on. Misty will actually say, when you're holding an empty weapon, hey player, why don't you switch weapons? Dempsey does break the fourth wall the most, but it's really funny when not only does he call out the player, but he's even called out Treyarch directly. And in one quote, you can even hear him say, hey Treyarch, can we get a new objective please? I think another favourite quote of mine has to be this one in Shangri-La.
Look at that. No power. Wait, does power even make sense in an ancient temple? Seriously, Treyarch? Seriously?
And another favourite is another one in Shangri-La. I've got to play this one too.
I thought we'd have a new objective by now. But no! You guys just never give the community what they want!
And there are just a whole boatload of quotes like this. Okay, that last quote I played from Dempsey has aged like fine wine, considering the state of the zombies community right now because of COD Vanguard. Monkey Bomb in Furnace. In the map Doris, there is a really odd and creepy Easter egg where if you go to the furnace room where the Thompson is located and throw a monkey bomb in the furnace itself, instead of playing its usual little jingle, the monkey bomb will start screaming and it sounds terrifying. After the monkey bomb explodes, you'll actually hear Samantha and she'll flame you for doing this. Damn, World at War really knew how to skyrocket the spook factor. If you want to do a brown pants speedrun, go and play World at War Zombies. I will recommend starting off at Verrucht. And if you are genuinely interested about how scary World at War Zombies is, then I made a whole like half-an-hour video talking about this. It's a pretty good analysis and honestly one of the best videos on my channel. So if you want to know more about this kind of stuff, and considering you're on this video, then I think you will like that one. Peter's Corpse. Peter McCain. This character is the zombies equivalent of Where's Wally. He can be found dead in the map Shinonuma with a missing arm, and it looks like he committed neck rope. Turns out Richtofen is the guy that did this to him. In the zombie storyline, Peter McCain was a marine that was sent out with Dempsey to investigate what the Nazis were doing in Group 935 before the two ended up getting split up. The reason I compared this guy to Where's Wally is due to him being a very subtle character, only appearing a few times if you know where to look, and I love that about him. He does play more significant roles in the story later down the line, however, but in Shinonuma, you don't really have to look too hard for this guy. He's just right in front of you when you spawn, and once again adds to the spooky scale of World at War. Another time we can see Peter McCain very obviously is when he has a very nice trip to Stalingrad. His corpse is just falling from the sky, and Primus are falling with him, and once they see him, they all dive towards him, huddle around, and use his parachute to descend safely into the map. Disassembled ray gun in the labs. It seems as though this entry is talking about the map 5 in the labs area. However, there isn't a disassembled ray gun lying around anywhere, but however, what I did find though was a disassembled Winter's Howl, and this is the main wonder weapon of 5, and you can even see where it was tested out due to the ice being all over the targets. I was looking around and I saw in the power room there were components that I felt resembled a ray gun, such as the energy cell looking things that you load into the gun, as well as the red wiring that would totally be in a ray gun. Although this does seem like a stretch, it's the most I could find, and I have a feeling this is what the OP was talking about. It doesn't seem as though there's anything in classified either, but I do think that those components on that table could be from a ray gun. Also at the parts I found this bit of paper, and now I'm wondering, is this a cipher? Knocking in the dressing room. Ah yes, the really strange and downright chilling knocking Easter egg in Zombies. This one dates all the way back to Black Ops 1 in Kino de Toten. Upon playing the map, if you go into the dressing room and stand at this barrier, you will hear a very loud and very hard to miss knocking noise that is really unsettling. This brings with it so many questions. Who is knocking? Is this part of a bigger mystery? Why is this even here? Why is the knocking so aggressive? And the thing is, we don't know. I will repeat that, we don't know. It doesn't seem to be any sort of Morse code, and no one can find anything to piece it together. It seems too intentional to add this into the game, so it has to be something, right? But until we get some sort of answer, it remains a huge mystery in COD Zombies. Fourth robot in Origins. If you play Origins, there are 3 robots robots that you can see walking around the map, as there always has been. But if you go just outside of Generator 2, you can actually see a 4th robot that is broken down. Just to clarify though, this isn't to be confused with the robot in the Giant, which the Mad Lads Primus fix up, from what we can tell at least, and then use to go over to the Horizon, which in the intro we see that robot get destroyed and Primus step out of it. And in the Horizon Draka you can actually see this destroyed robot. If you go to spawn and look out into the distance, you'll see it close by. Something that I really loved about the robots in Origins and just found really cool is that they have Norse themed names. The first 3 are called Freya, Odin and Thor. Say that one 3 times fast, that was a real tongue twister. But the community have given the 4th robot the name Loki. This obviously isn't an official name, but it's similar to how the community called Arthur, the giant in Buried, Leroy, and I believe that was started from Syndicate, because at the time no one knew what his name really was. I don't know about anyone else, but I still call him Leroy. And let's just give a shout out to our boy Leroy, okay? We all love you. It gets even better when you realize that it does fit with the Norse theme, and Loki in Norse mythology is considered as a fallen angel. Much like how the robot has fallen, which is just really fitting, and I am all for this. Treyarch, please make this one canon. Noises in the dentist's office. In Verrückt, there are a ton of creepy noises, as it is the scariest zombies map, hands down, and there is one really spooky one in particular that's located in the dentist's office at the chair. If you interact with it, you'll hear this sound play. Yeah, Verrückt has a lot of spooky stuff about it, but this is one that really sticks out, and is honestly just a very unsettling little Easter egg that you could come across. For those of you that have played Verrückt, then I'm sure you know that there's way more stuff like this, and that Verrückt did not fuck around with its horror. Raygun Wallby in Buried. Buried is a map with many hidden secrets, and so, of course, there is a hidden Raygun Wallby. Seriously, go and play Buried again, it'll surprise you at just how much stuff is crammed into that map. This can actually be done on all maps, but I do believe this was found on Buried. This is one of those weird perma-perks I mentioned on my last Iceberg video, which although many of them did have very inconsistent triggers, like no one really knew how they were obtained specifically, there are quite a few that we do know, and this was one of them. Now this can only be done if you're either the Crossbones rank or the one below, which is just the standard bone, and what you need to do is go on a map and buy the Olympia off the wall, and essentially just keep buying ammo for this thing. Just spam ammo buys until the next time you go to buy it again, you'll just get a ray gun, and it's really cool. And if you do this on Buried, you can literally get set up for a game with a ray gun from the wall, and then if you got that lightning quick reaction speed, you can go and get the LSAT wall by, and then by like what, round 2 or 3, you've got an instant setup. It seems like the reason why only lower ranks can do this Easter egg is so that it can help out new or noob players. Granted, they know how to do this, or maybe they accidentally find it, but considering how low of a rank you have to be, it definitely does seem like it's meant to give those low level players that head start and extra power boost in their match. Power Station Survival Map. On transit, you can find an outhouse which will lead you to the power station where, you guessed it, you turn on the power. Black Ops 2 has the town, bus station, and farm all as extra little survival maps that are pretty basic and bare bones, and as the title of this entry implies, Power Station was supposed to be a survival map too, but was removed for unknown reasons. Which, can I just throw my hands up and say, I would have loved to have seen how Power Station would have been as a survival map. With town and farm, it's a lot easier to judge because town is a training type of map, farm is a camping type of map, and as for bus station, it's pretty hard to tell because no one plays it. But Power Station would be really interesting to see what people would actually do and how people would play the map. There's probably a custom map of Power Station, but it definitely was planned in the game. There's even the little icon when you go to select what map you want to play on Green Run, and this obviously is what was meant to be used when you would go to select the map. Now that I think about it, it's actually quite annoying how we have bus station, town, farm, even diner, and the only thing that we don't have that was a separate playable map, whether it's for survival, grief, or turned, let's bring turned back at some point in Zombies, it was super fun by the way, is Power Station, PhD and Mule Kick hidden in Mob of the Dead. In Mob of the Dead, what a beautiful map, can I just say. If you head over to the docks, you can see the perks PhD Flopper and Mule Kick sat in a crate. There's absolutely no way that you can obtain the perks, and they're They're sat so close to you when you're looking out at them. This was definitely there to tease players who wanted access to these perks, especially PhD, considering the DLC map before Mob of the Dead was Diarized, where PhD was teased, and people really wanted that no fall damage that the perk had to offer. But much like the two perks in Mob of the Dead, PhD was completely inaccessible on Diarise as well. Treyarch not only had to tease us once by not giving us PhD on a map where it would be the most useful, but then decide to assert dominance by hitting us with the double whammy, the next DLC map straight after Diarise, by dangling not only PhD Flopper, but Mule Kick as well, right in front of our faces. Treyarch really know how to tease their community. I know when you're sleeping. Okay, hang on, don't freak out a minute, I don't actually know when you're sleeping, that's just the name of the entry. This is a really strange Easter egg on Shinonuma where if you go to a certain phone on the map, you can interact with it and it'll play the Easter egg song, much like any other map, and in the case of Shinonuma, it'll play the banger of a song that is The One by Kevin Sherwood and Elena Sigmund. What's so off about this is that when you interact with the phone enough to activate the song, on the other end you can hear a really creepy voice answer the phone and say, I know when you're sleeping. And then the Easter egg song will play, but I have never ever noticed this. And I'm sure many of you haven't either because you would just activate the song and then run off. It was pretty chilling to hear when I went back onto Shinonuma to do this. I'm gonna play this for you now, don't worry, it's not gonna be a jump scare.
What? Are they gonna put a music Easter egg in every map now?
There is a line in the song that says this phrase too, which is interesting, but my god, does hearing this send a shiver up your spine. I don't know who it is on the other end of the phone, but the voice just sounds very demonic. But I've got to be honest, I think back then Treyarch didn't think that far ahead with the story. So this is most likely just one of those scary little Easter eggs that doesn't really have any significance in the story. Org Warbuy. The Org from Black Ops 1 Zombies is a box-only weapon, so if you want it, you gotta spin for it. This rule does not apply to the Wii version, however. You could buy the Org off the wall for 1,200 points, and ammo wasn't purchasable for it originally, but it was then later fixed in a patch. It's a shame that in Kino de Toten, we don't have an Org Warbuy here on PC and console, because I actually think that is a really cool place to have a Warbuy. One has to wonder why we have the Org Warbuy on the Wii, but not on any other version of the game. Richtofen is homosexual. Remember the last Iceberg and there were a bunch of weird entries on that? Here we are again. And I don't think I can actually say the word on the entry out loud because YouTube seems to have a very strange history of demonetizing videos based on that word or videos with that word in, so I'm not gonna risk it. Surprise, surprise, YouTube have grabbed themselves another L. When I researched this entry, I found some things that I honestly just wish I never saw, so you better appreciate this one. The crazy thing is there is actually some evidence behind it, especially in the earlier Zombies installments like World at War and Black Ops 1. Ultimus Richtofen, who for those that don't know, that's the older version of Richtofen, has been known to say some very suggestive things, and some of the quotes are hilarious. Here's a classic example from the Call of the Dead Easter egg whilst the crew are stuck inside of a shelter and they're talking to one another.
Holy shitballs. You too. What did you do, Richtofen?
I did nothing. There's a light switch. Oh, I think I found a lever. Perhaps this will turn on the light.
Oh, let go. That's not a lever, Richtofen.
Here are a few more that I found, but I'm not really sure if I can read them out because I don't want YouTube to give me that big demonetization. Russman's face jump scare. In Mob of the Dead, you can see fireworks near the Golden Gate Bridge. If you head over to the roof and aim with a sniper scope at said fireworks, a jump scare will happen and this image will appear in front of your scope. The face is Russman? It certainly looks like him, and this is what the majority of the community has agreed on, but this is a huge mystery to this day as to to who this really is, because it's extremely hard to tell and we have no confirmation as to who it is. Some people think it's Nero Blackstone from Shadows of Evil, which is very plausible due to these two images looking very similar, and I do think that it would have made sense to tease Black Ops 3, especially if it was in development around this time. And even Reznov from the World at War and Black Ops 1 campaign, back when Mob came out, I was a big believer that this was Russman, but I'm very open to ideas with this one, because it's not exactly a closed case, and for it to be Russman just seems very random. But as to who it really is, I'm not sure we'll ever know. iOS port. There was a time where you could play COD Zombies on your phone. There's Black Ops 1 Zombies on Android and World at War on iOS. One day a few years back, on July 25th, 2018, the iOS game was removed mysteriously, and no one knows why. And even for the people that do have it, the app is just way too outdated to run now. It's a shame really, because it was fun, but at least we still have Black Ops 1 Zombies on Android. Yuri is the Pentagon Thief. The Pentagon Thief has become an infamous boss among the zombies community, and he only had to appear in just one zombies map to be so well known, and that map was 5. I think that the interesting thing was that no one really knew his identity, but this eventually led to loads of theories coming up about him being Yuri, who worked with Dr. Gersh in Ascension. And when Jason Blundell, you sweet man, released the zombies timeline, the theory was confirmed, and the Pentagon Thief was in fact Dr. Yuri Zavoyski. The timeline entry that confirms this theory reads November 5th, 1963. Obeying Samantha's wishes, Yuri tricks Gersh into activating the Gersh device. The rift created absorbs him and allows Samantha to travel through. Yuri is also absorbed and transported to the Pentagon. Thank you, Jason Blundell. Thank you. Black Ops 2 DLC 5. Yes, you heard that entry correctly. A DLC 5 was supposed to be in Black Ops 2 Zombies. Now this was supposed to be released during COD Ghost's life cycle, and an ex-Treyarch employee accidentally leaked these, and since then the word has spread about this supposed DLC 5, and everyone went mad over this. They were supposedly gonna remake the World at War maps, and these were unfinished. Sadly, this was cancelled because Activision wouldn't allow them to release it during Ghost's life cycle. It's nice to see Activision giving the players what they really want. And so this is a big reason why the Giant is in Black Ops 3, since Darius was a World at War map and Treyarch would have been working on it. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that this cancelled Black Ops 2 DLC 5 pushed Treyarch in the direction to try and get Zombies Chronicles done. Even if it wasn't planned from the start of Black Ops 3, I definitely think that they wanted to do it at some point down the line. And what better time to do it than in the heyday of the most successful Zombies mode ever, and the rest is history. Using the VR-11 on George Romero, one of the wonder weapons in Call of the Dead known as the VR-11, although I think it's a stretch to call this thing a wonder weapon. Can be used to shoot the chungus that is George Romero, and this will calm him down if he is in an angry state for about 10 to 15 seconds. I guess the VR-11 is good for something at least. Icarus flying over Morgue City. Now I did mention Icarus in the last Iceberg, although it was in a different context, but to talk specifically about Morgue City, the plane from Mob of the Dead, which is known as Icarus, can be seen flying over Morgue City in Shadows of Evil. There is actually a way to trigger this, and that's by doing the Pack-a-Punch quest. And once you do that, if you go outside, you'll see Icarus flying overhead. And from what the community can tell, this is the only Icarus Easter egg that you can get to trigger, whereas with the other sightings of Icarus, there's no known way to trigger them and get it to spawn in. Oh my god, there's a plane flying overhead as I'm talking about Icarus. That was weird. This isn't the only sighting we've seen of Icarus, like I mentioned earlier and in the last Iceberg, but I do want to correct myself here because there was one place I missed out. So I mentioned, yes, we saw Icarus flying overhead in Shadows of Evil. We also see it above the catwalk on the roof in the Giant, but I missed out that you can see it literally going through a time pocket and coming out of one in Zetsubo no Shima. And that is insane because that is the first time we see it actively going through time pockets. As to why it's actually flying around in the first place, that is something we simply don't know. Private Eye's Gobblegum. Private Eyes was a leaked Gobblegum that ended up never being introduced in Black Ops 3. It ended up being scrapped. It was supposed to be coming in Der Eisendrache, with its ability being all nearby zombies are shown with an indicator on screen. I don't know about you, but this does sound like Death Perception. This was a perk that was introduced in Black Ops 4, and what it does is essentially highlight all zombies around walls, and so you can see them through walls. It's basically wall wall hacks, but just for COD zombies. And you would also receive screen indicators when enemies were approaching the player from off screen. So if a zombie was behind you, you'd be alerted. But what's really interesting about Private Eyes is that you can see it on a Gobblegum poster in Shadows of Evil. So it seems like they were planning Private Eyes very early in Black Ops 3. Derice Hanging Scientist. In Derice, if you look out of the map, just near one of the teleporters that is at double tap, you can see a hanging man along with some text that says help in some weird symbols. The reason the entry refers to this man as a scientist is because he is actually H. Porter, which, if you don't know who he is, Porter is the Group 935 scientist who invented the Porter's X2 ray gun, as well as the Porter's X2 zap gun and the Porter's Mark II ray gun. And if this still doesn't ring a bell, the weapon names I've just read out are the upgraded versions of these wonder weapons when you pack-a-punch them. He was at the Reese when the outbreak happened, and there is even a radio where you hear him before he finishes the job. I would play this radio, but I actually played a World at War radio from Derice in one of my videos, and it actually got copyright claimed by some random audio library, so I don't really want to chance this one again. The radio reads, coming from H. Porter, but I'm all out of hope. Auf Wiedersehen, which means goodbye in German, my friend. He turns on an alarm and the PA system says, warning, the shield is now active. Find and destroy the designated materials and report to the barracks. This is not a drill. H. Porter, damn it, I can't find my pills. They are coming. I must do what I must do. God forgive us all. And then that's when you hear the noises of rope neck. Another thing I found very interesting that proves that this is Porter even further is that you can see a Group 935 field operations manual near his body, which clearly must have been his own. Since we know how H. Porter kicked the bucket with this radio, and since you can actually see him, there's a very strange contradiction on the official timeline. However, it says he used a cyanide capsule to finish the job, making this even more intriguing. Kino posters foreshadowed the storyline. This is a bit of a wild one, so buckle up. In Kino de Toten, there are posters that have predicted the storyline for the future of COD Zombies, such as this one here of Pygmalion. Pygmalion is a Greek story of a man who fell in love with his own sculpture, and this has been adapted into many different stories, but they all follow the same premise. But however, this can be interpreted in two main ways, I feel. The first is in terms of Samantha, and by this I mean that Maxis created Samantha, and on the poster there is some German which when translated reads, he made a woman but he gave her free will. This being on the poster should make a lot of sense as to why this is about Sam. Maxis did create her since he is her father, and the free will he gave her is a little more vague, but what it could mean is that he was the catalyst for her gaining her powers and causing all of the havoc that we see in the rest of Zombies. This was made at a time where the devs were leaning into Samantha's story arc a lot more during Black Ops 1, so this is very plausible in my eyes, because the story was really starting to pick up, and little bits of foreshadowing like this would just work so well. I always found the actual image itself of the Pygmalion poster to mirror Samantha rising up from the MPD, as we see her do in the Moon Easter egg. The other interpretation here is that the poster is referring to Maxis and Sophia in Black Ops 3 Zombies. Maxis, who was once in love with a woman named Sophia, and to summarize, she was his personal assistant, and they were doing some experiments with a zombified test subject, and it was named Subject 26, until something went wrong and Sophia was attacked and infected, but she didn't want to tell Maxis about it. Maxis found out and then knocked her out. God damn, Maxis wasn't messing around. While she was out, he transferred her consciousness to a machine that was named Sophia. In terms of the Pygmalion story, I think this works too, since Maxis did love Sophia and he did also create her. What kind of shoots this one down for me though is that I don't think that Treyarch planned all the way to Black Ops 3 Zombies during Black Ops 1, but I do definitely think that this is some sort of foreshadowing to the first interpretation I mentioned about Samantha, which to me personally does make more sense. However, I do find the accidental foreshadowing of Maxis and Sophia really cool as well. Last gen Zetsubo build. I couldn't find much about a last gen Zetsubo build except for some memes about it not being in there on last gen Black Ops 3, which now is the time to correct myself on the first Zombies Iceberg, where I said that the Giant wasn't on last gen consoles, but it actually was. The only maps on there is Shadows of Evil, The Giant, and Der Eisendrache. I can imagine that there was a build of last gen Zetsubou, but I do think it's safe to assume that it may have been in development but was cancelled due to hardware limitations, or maybe just because of how poorly last gen Black Ops 3 was received. And in all fairness, it was probably a liability to Treyarch, since that time spent on the last gen Black Ops 3 could have been used on the current generation of the game. Treyarch were probably told to just scrap any current or future plans for the last gen version of the game. And lost with those future plans may have been a last gen Zetsubou no Shima build. Fate of the Call of the Dead crew. The Call of the Dead crew, consisting of some amazing people by the way, we have Robert England, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Danny Trejo, and Michael Rooker, which is just an amazing crew for a zombies map. I feel are actually frequently glossed over in zombies, and considering they're only in one map, it's a pretty reasonable question to ponder what the hell happened to these guys. In Revelations, a radio can be found in the Shangri-La section of the map that states that the Call of the Dead cast and crew have been missing for 6 weeks in Siberia, which is where the map takes place, and that is where they were filming before, you know, it all happened. This implies that they stayed there after the Easter egg was completed and died fighting. You have to remember they didn't really serve a huge greater purpose like many other characters did in the zombie story, like Victus or Primus and Ultimus. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They helped Ultimus get what they need, get out of that bunker, and then they were just left to their own devices. And if the zombies didn't kill them, then the coldness would have. In Siberia, of course it would have. In the map, they didn't exactly have the most warm clothing, since they were there to just do some scenes. Not everyone in COD Zombies exactly got a happy ending, a heroic ending, and I think the Call of the Dead crew is a shining example of this. From what the radio implies, and just when you kind of add it all together, you realise that they had a death that was probably just as unfortunate and bitter as the cold they were faced with in Siberia. Porter's End. Not really sure why this is on here, considering the Reese Hanging Scientist entry was the same thing. Yeah, let's move on, shall we? Bus driver's blueprints in Classified. In Classified on Black Ops 4, you can find the blueprints for Ted, the qualified robotic bus driver and certified mad lad from Transit. It's really interesting to look at since you can see a lot of detail about how Ted is manufactured. It's good confirmation that the Americans did in fact make Ted, but what is interesting is why his blueprints were hidden in the Pentagon if he was just a robotic bus driver. Regardless though, how could you not love Ted? Peter's Grave. This is a really nice little Easter egg that I honestly think has just completely flew under the radar and is easily one of the best entries on the Iceberg. It's honestly really tucked away in Zombies Easter egg history, and a very big reason for this is because it can only be done on the COD World at War Zombies mobile game that's on iOS. You know, the Zombies iOS game that we talked about a couple entries ago that's not available anymore. If you play Shinonuma and you open up all of the huts and get all of the perks to spawn in, a message will appear saying all areas unlocked. Now go find the grave. And sure enough, a grave with the name Peter on it will spawn in and the player's knife will be replaced with a shovel, with that shovel being stronger than the actual knife itself that you start with. And when you find the grave, interact with it to dig it up and you'll be rewarded with a free Wonderwafer DG2. I love this mini Easter egg, and what a nice tribute to our boy Peter McCain. Everyone press F to pay respects. Teddy was a liar. In Zombies there are many chalk drawings and phrases around various Zombies maps, and one of them has been scattered around the franchise as a whole, which was originally found on Verrupt, and it reads, Teddy is the biggest liar. It's been repeated in Der Reese 2, stating Teddy is a liar. There was a lot of speculation as to what this could have meant, but in Revelations, we got a quote from Dr. Monty that sheds more light on this, and it says how Edward Richtofen grew up in an orphanage and was not treated too kindly by the other kids there. Richtofen would lie to them about how his dad was a famous scientist, and they would scribble on the walls the quote, Teddy is a liar, which is a really cool little backstory to Richtofen's childhood. I mean, we didn't need that Easter egg at all, but I'm glad it got explained. There's also an entry on the official Zombies timeline that reads, January 24th, 1940. Richtofen renounces his involvement with the Illuminati. When asked how he could abandon his obligation to the Order, he says, Teddy was a liar. Meat. Meat was a leaked game mode that was supposed to be coming to Black Ops 2 Zombies along with another game mode called race. Before I dive into it though, meat could also be referring to the zombie meat. I promise it's not as weird as it sounds. And this zombie meat can be used on the game mode Grief, which if it's thrown at another player, it'll attract zombies to them, since Grief is about trying to screw over the other team as much as you can. As for the game mode meat, we even have what appears to be a loading screen for it, and there were even some voice lines from a placeholder Richtofen. When it was further developed, and Nolan North, the actual voice actor of Richtofen, would be able to do these voice lines.
Hey there, willing participants! Welcome to Meat. The rules are easy. When the meat drops, you finally reached manhood. I mean, grab it, throw it, don't get caught with it. Zombies will only attack you if your side has the meat. Don't die and you might just win. Feel free to kick it too, my pretties. Get ready to play Meat!
These were cut later on in development for unknown reasons, but my best guess is the usual time constraints. I can imagine they had to focus on the DLC maps first and foremost, and so not only Meat, but Race to also be in development would probably take up a lot of time, so I do think that that's the most reasonable explanation we have, because it does seem that that is usually the way that COD development tends to go. I do genuinely believe that COD Black Ops 2 Zombies is one of the most innovative zombies titles we've ever had, but the problem is there's been many game modes where such innovation could come from, but it's never been able to see the light of day. And I think that Meat and Race are a perfect example of this. Oh, and as for Race, I'll let the placeholder Tesco value version of Richtofen explain what Race is, although I'm sure you already have an idea as to what it is.
Hello, my sexy leg participants. It is your fearless leader, Richtofen. Welcome to Race. It's very easy. Just kill the required amount of zombies to open a door, move through to the next area, and repeat until you cross the finish line. A glorious game if I do say so myself. Be sure to cause your opponent some grief along the way. Get ready to race!
What I will tell you is that luckily we got Grief and Turn, but these game modes were so fun and creative in Black Ops 2, and I wish we got to see more, since I honestly do think that these are the type of things that the zombies community is pretty damn thirsty for, as of where we're at right now with things, especially when it comes to shaking things up gameplay wise with zombies. Jackass Flats. Really weird sounding name there, like this sounds like something that wouldn't be related to zombies at all, and I think that that makes this entry all the more intriguing. Jackass Flats is the nickname given to a sector of the Nevada National Security Site, which as you may know, Nuketown is set in Nevada too. You can hear a broadcast on transit via a TV, and there's a very interesting and obscure radio coming from a random guy, either named Jackass Flats or maybe broadcasting on behalf of them. I'll play the radio for you now, although it's a bit staticky and a little bit hard to understand in certain points, so I'll probably throw the transcript up as well.
Hello. This is Jackass Flats calling any human community within broadcasting distance. We're located at standard map coordinates 37 degrees 07 north, 116 degrees 03 west. This is a warning to anyone contacted by a group of mysterious voices. Several of our party began to hear the voices, and their competing instructions and incompatible demands drove a wedge down the center of the camp. Half of the camp is carrying out the demands of only through electronic. This voice is a big, long, and its ultimate goal's unclear. The other voice cannot be heard by humans who have not been on the law. Madness this way lies. Neither of these instruction sets will understand. Those of us who have not chosen a side have been hunted by both sides, seeking to force us to assist them. Oh God, they found us!
Now I'm sure you're all wondering, what the hell was that? Like, what does that mean? This is something that we don't have a definite answer for, but it's more or less not important to the main story of zombies, I don't think, and I have a feeling that that is why a lot of people haven't put much thought into it. One thing that is pretty clear is that this is referring to Maxis and Richtofen communicating with survivors, and so that explains the two sides. Considering we hear the screams at the end, I think it's safe to say though that Jackass Flats, whoever whoever he is or whoever they are, maybe there's more of them, probably just got game ended by the zombies. Zombies_Paris. Zombies_Paris was meant to be the DLC 4 map for Black Ops 1 instead of Moon, and the codename Zombies_Paris was in fact the original console name for Moon, which hinted at it being in the game, and by the way, it still has that console name to this day. Obviously, this map was supposed to be set in Paris, and it was cancelled due to Jimmy Zielinski changing his mind about it, since they wanted the last map for Black Ops 1 Zombies to feel a bit more impactful and climactic, so the Moon of all places was a good shout. Also, big F for Jimmy Zielinski, that man was a legend, and I would just love to know what this man's thought process was for some of the maps that he made. Lunar Lander in Shangri-La. I never noticed this until I looked it up. On Shangri-La, some of the debris that you clear in order to be able to progress through the map actually have broken pieces of lunar landers in them, which are the rocket-powered platforms that you zoom around on in Ascension. Not gonna lie, that's a pretty cool little detail, and something that I don't think you would notice straight away. Wunderwaffe and Thundergun in 5. The Thundergun can be seen in 5, although it's not able to be used and can be seen in the weapons lab, and this is where we can assume that this is being reverse engineered and tinkered with for some other purpose. There are quotes for Thundergun kills in 5 such as "clear the deck" and "best gun period" coming from JFK, who according to the last Iceberg he was voiced by himself. Crazy stuff. The Thundergun was considered as an addition to 5 but never ended up making it in. As for the Wunderwaffe, it makes no appearance in the map except for a handful of quotes that read "worthy of a Ben Franklin," and also "I could get used to this." So it seemed like the Wunderwaffe was coming to 5, but we got The Winter's Howl, Sir Pablo Marinus. Much like Peter McCain, Sir Pablo Marinus was one of the sleeper side characters in Zombies lore and ended up playing a huge role later down the line. At first he was just referred to as the Mexican test subject according to early radios, who was with Nikolai Belinsky and Takeo Masaki in Siberia after being captured by Group 935 and used for experimentation. An experiment that Richtofen performed went wrong and Pablo was assumed dead and was then replaced by Tank Dempsey. Turns out that Pablo wasn't actually dead, and he would go on to have these 115 visions of him in the Great War, where he would eventually go on to play a major role in said war after Victus go on to help him in Tag der Toten. After they construct the Agarthan device so he can go back, fighting alongside Primus, learning about Dr. Monty's plan, and fulfilling his destiny of being a knight in the Great War. He also helps post-Revelations Richtofen escape through a portal to Alcatraz, and before he went, Pablo gave him the elemental fire gem, which is what we see in the Blood of the Dead Easter egg. Before Pablo left Siberia in Tag der Toten, he threw the Agarthan device to Victus, and they then got it for Richtofen, which is when the ending of the Aether story happened. I'm glad that Pablo did get to be in the spotlight later on in Zombies, because he ended up being actually helpful as well, and it just felt like a character arc just wrapped up really well. Kino was World at War DLC 4. Now is the time for my redemption arc. In my last Iceberg, I said that I didn't know what the entry meant, and here we are now, months later. I still have people correcting me in the comments about this in my last Iceberg video. The Kino DLC 4 refers to the fact that Kino der Toten was Cheers. I remember learning about this beforehand, but the Iceberg entry on the last Iceberg was simply Kino is DLC 4, which made no sense to me and was very vague. So it was pretty confusing, but the title of this entry completely clears it up. So Kino der Toten was originally meant to be DLC 4 for World at War Zombies, but was saved for Black Ops 1 due to Modern Warfare 2's release being deemed too close to the release of the DLC 4. Crazy to think how it would have gone down if Kino was released for World at War. My god, that felt like a weight off of my shoulders clearing that one up. Zombie Engineer in Kino. Sadly, there was not much on this one I could find, but however, I did find out what the hell an engineer zombie is supposed to be. They're actually in Dead Ops Arcade, and you can see a type of zombie known as the engineer zombie. It drops from the sky, has a big ass wrench, and it's a chunky boy. As to what this has to do with Kino der Toten, I'm gonna assume here that it was either meant to be in Kino, or it was one of those rumors like the Hitler boss, the ray gun every time thing, or more fittingly, the Kino ladder. Anyone remember that? Purgatory NM 1932. If you go on Mob of the Dead and head over to the Warden's office, you'll see a bulletin board, and on it there are a bunch of news articles. There's one in particular that stands out, and it's a headline that refers to a Purgatory NM. The year for it is stated as 1932. Whilst I have been searching for a concrete answer for this one, it seems like a lot of people say a lot of different things about this, and so Purgatory NM 1932 is very vague and open for interpretation. It has been speculated to be a teaser for Buried, which is a very common thing Treyarch like to do in some zombies maps. You might remember they used to do it back in like World at War and Black Ops 1. The NM would stand for New Mexico, which is the type of place for a western town to be, as well as the date being 1932, which although the 1930s was just a little bit over the Wild West era, I can imagine that there were old mining towns that had the same aesthetic. The other interpretation is that it could just be feeding into more of the symbolism of Mob of the Dead, reminding the characters that they are in Purgatory, and Mob of the Dead, as well as Shadows of Evil by the way, is set in the 1930s. If we're going down a similar line of thinking as to NM being New Mexico, I actually looked up Purgatory NM, and there is a canyon in New Mexico called Purgatory, so I don't think that they're related, but hey, at least we learned a bit of geography today. If anything, like I said earlier, it's definitely just a reference to Mob of the Dead, as to not only confirm that it's set in the 1930s, but with the place being called Purgatory, I do think it is just reinforcing the fact that the characters are stuck there, and it's just to make it feel a bit more creepy and ominous. Like I said at the beginning of the entry, it's up to you how you take this one. Okay, this next entry, I'm gonna try and read it all in one. Okay, here goes. Round 2.18483E plus 009. What a weird name for an entry. Despite looking for results on this one, there wasn't a single thing I could find, except however, in the comments section for this Iceberg, there was one person I've seen talk about this on the whole internet from the looks of things, and they said, it's the highest possible round that can be reached via the Broken World at War round system, if I remember correctly. United Canada, I hope you do remember correctly, because this is the only information I can find. I do think that United Canada is right on this, which is the person that made that comment, but United Canada was replying to a comment from Bright Toxic, who much like me says that they can't find any information about it. The person that Bright Toxic was asking was a person called Griv5, and it seems like they know what it is as well, because they said, man, I'm chilling at second up from the bottom. Reading the round 2.18483E plus 009 hit hard. But outside of these two people, I have not seen anyone else talk about this round yet. Somehow, I feel like I've heard of it. When I've looked it up, I've found nothingness upon nothingness. United Canada's answer is the only thing we've really got to go off of this, although if anyone knows what this is, please do comment below, because I feel like they're right, but a bit more of an in-depth explanation would be really nice. In fact, if Griv5 or United Canada are watching this in the off chance they are, and one of you two have a more detailed answer, then please comment below, because as far as I know, you two are the only people on the internet that know what this is. Wii's becoming bricked. Playing Black Ops 1 on the Nintendo Wii back in the day would have put your console at risk. There have been several reports of playing Black Ops on a Wii, and then their console gets mysteriously bricked. It allegedly would break the disk drive, making it irreparable, and it seems like the actual fault would be that the disk would be spinning so much trying to read the map data, and it would just get destroyed. There's been other people that have had the same issue on the Black Ops Wii port, and they've said that it was using the FAMAS that did it too, which I guess makes that a cursed gun. What really hooked me about this entry is that whilst I was doing research for it, I ended up finding some conflicting reports about the issue. And I don't mean one or two people saying, oh yeah, you know, this didn't happen, or at least not to me, not like one of those game bugs that you would find, say you played Cyberpunk 2077 at launch, and it was like, you know, I know a lot of people got some bugs, but I personally didn't. It wasn't one of those things. For some reason, and I really don't know why, some people were saying that the game didn't brick Wii's, and some people were persisting that it was a common issue, which not only makes this one more mysterious, but my headcanon for this is that some people slipped into a parallel universe where Wii's were pristine consoles that went on to be more technically advanced consoles and be absolutely revolutionary, and that society went on to have flying cars, all because they never crashed when playing Black Ops 1. It has a real Mandela effect vibe to it, and it's just so entertaining. Online multiplayer on mobile. On the mobile version of Black Ops Zombies, you used to be able to play online with others, but one day the app was not supported anymore, and with that, the online servers were Thanos snapped too. Roblox Derice. Oh damn. Roblox Derice was the shit back in the day. There were servers on Roblox where you could play a Roblox version of Derice. I remember playing this before I was able to get an Xbox 360 on a toaster laptop. Think of it as like the poor man's COD Zombies experience, and from what I can remember, it was a pretty good time and stayed true to zombies with the same map layout. However, it doesn't just stop at Doris. I remember playing Nakdon Toten on Roblox as well, and the other World at War maps such as Verrückt and Shinonuma. They looked dreadful, played clunky as hell, and made Vanguard look like a masterpiece, but man, it was fun. Kino Ambience Anxiety Frequencies. All COD Zombies maps have map ambience in them, which add to the tone of the map and make them feel like living or not so living places. The map ambience specifically that this entry is referring to is the audio based, such as random knocking, things breaking, wind blowing, you get the idea. Now when this entry mentions anxiety frequencies, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the Breath of the Wild Guardian chase music, which if you know, you know. I'm gonna level with you here, I'm still scared of Guardians to this day. I feel like this entry to zombies is what Wet Dry World's negative emotional aura is to Super Mario 64. There are certain sounds in Kino de Toten that always used to freak me out, especially noises of certain frequencies. I don't know what it is, but some of the noises just trigger that fight or flight instinct, such as the knocking and banging, the wood creaking noises, and some sparking noises as well. They're just very off-putting to hear, and combine this with the visuals of Black Ops 1 Kino, and you're in for a ride, and it makes for a really thought-provoking entry. And it's not like this is just one of those entries to sound edgy and overly scary, because I remember playing Black Ops 1 on Kino. I spent a lot of time on that back in the day, and there are just some noises that do not feel good to the ears. And I'm sure there are these quote anxiety frequencies on other maps as well because of the ambience, but for Kino de Toten they just seem a bit more apparent. And if you load up Kino de Toten in Black Ops 1, you'll see what I mean. I'll play some of the Kino de Toten ambience for you now, but don't worry, it's not going to be really loud or anything and just completely destroy your ears. So here is some Kino de Toten ambience. And I hope this isn't just me that's gone through that. I wonder if it's one of those universal experiences, which would honestly make me feel so much better. Shangri-La's second ending. Did you know that Shangri-La has an alternate ending? The map's Easter egg follows two British, yes I said British, explorers named Brock and Gary, and they helped Ultimus obtain the focusing stone, and the explorers were put in an infinite loop because of said focusing stone. This is part of the original timeline. In a cipher found in Zetsubo no Shima, we learn about the alternate ending to Brock and Gary regarding temporal rifts caused from Primus teleporting around everywhere. The cipher reads, "Urgent telegram. We have just received word that the private plane carrying the expedition crew encountered a freak atmospheric event, which caused it to crash, killing all on board, including the famous explorers Brock and Gary. This comes weeks after owner announcement about finding the location of Shangri-La." That cipher was really big for the community at the time, because we never really had any info or ciphers about Shangri-La since the map came out all the way back in Black Ops 1. So I think it's really good that we actually got something here. And this second alternate ending is a really good example of the COD Zombies multiverse coming into fruition. Victor's storyline time period retcon. This was tricky to find, so there honestly may very well be multiple answers, since Zombies isn't a stranger to retcons here and there. It seems that the Victor's time period retcon is in reference to the dates as to when the timeline took place. For example, I remember hearing about how Transit was set in 2025. In fact, even a quick search would tell you this exact same thing. But when the official timeline came out, it ended up being set a decade later in the year 2035. Another Victus retcon, although it isn't time related, is the order the characters are in when they are cryo-frozen in the pods in Blood of the Dead. At the ending of the Zombies comics, spoiler for the Zombies comics here, Victus are put in the cryopods and go in this order from left to right. Misty, Russman, Stuhlinger, and finally Moralton. In the Tag de Toten intro cutscene, we see Victor step out of the pods, and what's really strange is that they come out in a different order, despite the comics being canon. The order in the Tag de Toten cutscene goes from left to right again: Stuhlinger, Russman, Moralton, and then Misty. It's not a huge deal, but it sure is bizarre. Maps never released due to extra dimensional rifts. Okay everyone, this is the point of the iceberg where it gets kinda whack just like the last one, but that doesn't mean it's not interesting, and plus there's some normal entries on here anyway. Although I've gotta say, maps not releasing due to extra dimensional rifts really seems like creepypasta territory. Extra dimensional rifts are extremely well known from the zombie storyline, and this entry implies that maybe there were maps we never had because they were thrown into these rifts and they were just lost in oblivion forever. This is also a common occurrence that you'll see on many other icebergs, things not releasing due to insert ominous reason. But just to entertain this entry though, we could have had some of the best and worst maps lost through the rifts, and going down the same line of thought, the opposite could have happened. Maybe some of the weirdest COD Zombies maps were brought through these rifts, such as Transit for its odd nature. Dead Ops Arcade is canon. Okay, so you may shake your head at this one upon first glance. This is just one of those silly iceberg entries, but Dead Ops Arcade, or at least some of it, may very well be canon to the Aether story in particular, and this all starts from Cosmic Silverback. Cosmic Silverback was the GOAT of Dead Ops Arcade. He was the main villain from the mode, and I think this is why everyone remembers Dead Ops so fondly, other than its fun and laid back gameplay. His design is a zombie gorilla in a spacesuit, which is similar to the monkeys in the spacesuits from Ascension that come and snatch up all your perks, which are really annoying. Don't you think it's interesting that they share such a specific similarity? Monkeys that are zombified in spacesuits. There's also a poster you can find in 5 that looks like some sort of magazine cover. It says Exposed, which features Cosmic Silverback on the front cover, and the flavor text is Russians launch first primate into space and it returned a what the hell is this? And the date is July 7th, 1962. Additionally, in a Treyarch blog about Dead Ops 3, they had something quite interesting to say regarding our boy Silverback. In the first Dead Ops Arcade, players squared off against the Cosmic Silverback, a mutant gorilla that escaped from the Black Ops Zombies map, Ascension. Yeah, this now confirms from Treyarch themselves that Dead Ops, or at least a part of it, is canon, especially with the other evidence in consideration. I never could have dreamed that Dead Ops Arcade would ever have any significance to the main COD Zombie storyline. I mean, I've just always thought that it was this completely separate thing that Treyarch would have done, maybe just for shits and giggles, or just for something extra to give players when they're bored of zombies and can just hop on to Dead Ops. But not only the aesthetics of Cosmic Silverback and all of the monkeys that you see on the map, the date being in the 60s of the magazine, and then obviously everything Treyarch said, it's clear that it has a heavy significance in Ascension, and it only makes me wonder how much more of Dead Ops is actually canon. Maybe the gameplay has something to do with the story, whether it's tied into Ascension or not, although I can't really see that part of it being possible, but I'm sure there's a lot more about Dead Ops Arcade we haven't found yet because it's just not as played and looked into as much as regular Zombies is. So it only makes me wonder what other intriguing secrets lie in Dead Ops Arcade. Round Omega. When I searched Round Omega, I just found sunglasses. Yeah, I couldn't find a lot about this one. Omega is the 24th and last letter of the Greek alphabet and stands for an ending to something, particularly a grand conclusion to something. What this entry seems to be implying is that one day we may very well get around Omega in some way, shape or form. Maybe one grand Easter egg in the form of a round, or maybe a zombies round that is so unbelievably hard or insane, we would need someone like the Relaxing End to beat it or something, because if he could get to round 11 on Black Ops Zombies DS, then he could definitely beat round Omega. Nuketown Bunker Interior. The Nuketown Bunker Interior was always an intriguing mystery to Zombies players, as there was no telling what could be down there. Except for Moralton, but, you know, it's only Moralton. How big is this? Is it going to be like the Super Mario 64 castle's internal plexus, where it seems to be much more expanded and larger on the inside than what it appears to be on the outside? The answer is kinda. In Blackout, we can go inside the bunker, and in Zombies, it's in the remade Nuketown map Alpha Omega, where it's copy-pasted from Blackout with a few changes made. But for real, why did it have to be copy and pasted? I don't really understand how they would just do that. Anyway, in Alpha Omega, I do think that it is much bigger than we thought it would be, especially considering there are rooms out of bounds we can't even get into either. We can also see a TED prototype in there, as well as perks, Pack-a-Punch, and even the Avogadro, a returning boss from Transit transit that can be found as the final boss fight in the Alpha Omega Easter egg. Oh, and the mannequins are creepy as hell down there too. So it's safe to say that the Nuketown bunker interior is full of secrets, some exciting like perks and Pack-a-Punch, and some not so exciting and much more sinister. Die Rise ground level. On the map selection screen, we can see that there is a highway or street of some sort full of cars, and it can be seen when going to select Die Rise. We can actually see this same street briefly in the buried opening cutscene, and you can't see the ground in Die Rise due to the fog rolling in. And just for speculation here, with the amount of cut content from Black Ops 2, as I'm sure you've seen from this Iceberg, it may very well be the case that maybe this was some sort of playable area in Die Rise. Maybe an extra part of the map or a survival map even, but it is plausible that maybe there was going to be a way to get to this Die Rise ground level. Call of the Dead government cover-up. In Tag der Toten, the name of the stranded ship you can see is Tugarin, which is a Russian word. If you guessed that Tugarin is from mythology, then you would be right, because what is zombies now without some mythology sprinkled in there? Tugarin is a mythological creature that is the embodiment of cruelty, pain, and evil. The ship is pretty ominous with not just the name, but this is in fact a reference to the Apothicons due to the ship transporting blood of an elder god. And for those of you who are wondering what an Apothicon elder god is supposed to be, here's what they look like, and these are straight from the Dark Aether, and one of those chunky lads just inhales the Pack-a-Punch at the start of Revelations. However, this isn't the only elder god we've ever seen. We've actually seen an elder god in the more recent zombies games such as Cold War. It was teased in D Machine and we couldn't quite exactly figure out what it was, due to it being something you could only really see outside of the map. But then it was introduced in Firebase Z as a boss fight, and this is what it looks like. It's a big, tall, long thing. I don't really know how to describe it. The government cover-up part of it is a bit harder to find, but I can only assume that because of this blood that's being transported, maybe it's going to a government so they can actually do something with the blood, because I'm really not sure why it would have to be transported via a boat of all things. If it was omnipotent beings or any of that other voodoo stuff, to have to rely on a boat to be able to transport something like Elder God blood from point A to point B. Research did get a little thin with this one, but it does seem pretty logical to me. It makes you wonder what the hell they were doing with the Elder God blood in the first place, but whatever it was, I don't think it was very good. Another way you could interpret this entry is that George Romero had an assistant named Sally, who we mentioned earlier on the Revelations radio. Remember, it was her who said that the cast and crew for Call of the Dead, aka our four main characters of the map, were missing. Is the entry trying to say here that because of the cast and crew going missing, and you gotta remember, it's not just one or two people, these are four well-known actors as well as a very famous director and a whole production team that all just mysteriously vanished in the middle of Siberia. Maybe because of that, and the fact that Sally, George Romero's assistant, was reporting on how they've been missing for 6 weeks, maybe the government would have tried to have covered up the events of the map knowing that this happened. It's not like they were just in a complete icy desert. I mean, think about it, they were at a landmark, a very distinct landmark, mind you, where there's a whole ship that is like frozen over, there's a huge lighthouse and just other landmarks that would make this place fairly easy in the middle of Siberia, of all places, to locate, and plus someone would have had to have known where they were. And one of those people being George Romero's assistant. I mean, how would Sally not know where he's going? Maybe Sally is involved with it, or maybe she genuinely doesn't know, but I don't know about you, but it does seem kinda sus. So it's a pretty good question to ask, was this some sort of government cover-up for the public not to find out what events took place on the map Call of the Dead? Black Ops 4 Sentient AI. In Black Ops 4, the bots that you can add into your game are actually capable of doing the Easter eggs. To a certain extent, at least. Not only can they help you stay alive and other little things like that, they can actually do parts of the Easter egg for you, but the thing they can't do is be able to help you out with the interactions that you have to do in certain Easter egg steps, such as all players having to interact with something to progress the main Easter egg quest. On the plus side though, not all Black Ops 4 Easter eggs have this requirement. To me, this seems like the AI, if programmed slightly more, would be able to assist and carry you through an Easter egg from start to finish, which would be absolutely insane to think of, almost as though they were sentient. See, I mentioned the sentient part of the AI, I said the thing. The OP of the Iceberg said that this was just a creepypasta they added to the Iceberg for fun, but I do think it has some relevance. And now for the last entry on the Iceberg, Memories of an Ascension map. Okay, this is also a creepypasta type of entry, which alludes to us remembering a map that never existed. The map in question being Ascension. Now to entertain this entry, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that maybe we can play the map, but it wasn't originally there. And to link it to the other entry we had not long ago of maps being lost due to extra dimensional rifts, maybe Ascension slipped into COD Zombies via the rifts, or I don't know, maybe we have memories of the map that aren't actually true. It's ambiguous and obscure though. What is that? It looks really blurry. I just need to focus on it a minute. Is that a bonus entry? Well, I guess it would be rude not to cover it, right? Bonus entry, the Maxis image. So I decided to add an entry of my own onto the iceberg here to leave it off on something very unknown and abstract. So in the layer of the iceberg, you can see a picture, a very ominous one, mind you, of a man. In terms of obscurity, there isn't even a tier on the iceberg, and I doubt most people know this. This image was supposedly an early rendition as to what Maxis would look like in COD Zombies very early on, and we're talking like World at War here. There's even some text under the photo which was insanely hard to read, so I hope my pain was worth it. It reads, "The only remaining picture of Dr. Ludwig Maxis, retrieved from the archive of the Reichstag. Allegedly, he never anticipated the creation of the demons or devices. Indeed, he was involved in his research into weaponry and advanced transportation. His research ended abruptly. The whereabouts of Dr. Maxis and his family are unknown." We made it, everyone. We got back eventually. And this iceberg was whack. Did you see some of the entries on there? I mean, I would hope you have if you're at this point in the video. I thought that this iceberg was full of really interesting entries, and although we didn't have as good a conclusion as we did on the last iceberg with the "we are all part of a greater cycle" entry, I thought that as a whole this iceberg was just really fun too. And in similar fashion to the first one, research put together and just everything in between. It has took a long time. I mean, this has been months in the making now. But with the amazing support from the first iceberg video, the criticism that some people gave, and very good criticism mind you, was something I didn't want to ignore, so I just threw it into this video. And I do hope that this was an entertaining watch for you, and if you've made it this far, you have my deepest gratitude. Pretty much 95% of the entries on this iceberg were all completely different to the first one, and that shows how dense COD Zombies is with info, trivia, rabbit holes, the whole lot. And so I'm glad to have covered this second iceberg that has totally different things on it compared to the first one. The first iceberg wasn't perfect, but I really wanted to try and get this one right. I'd like to thank Agrobot for posting this iceberg, because if they didn't post, then this video simply wouldn't be possible. And I would also like to thank all of you for stopping by on this video and for making it to the end. I hope that you got the same level of enjoyment from this video as I did making it, and if you're still here, then that means that you like COD Zombies, and you're in luck, because I have a boatload of COD Zombies content on my channel, but I also am planning on doing a bit of Apex Legends maybe, and I recently did a Dying Light 2 video if that's your thing, because with the way Vanguard is, there's kinda nothing to upload. And if you're somehow here and you've not watched the first iceberg, which is in a way the first part to this video, then I do recommend checking that out. But thank you for coming with me on this second Zombies iceberg, where we took an even deeper dive. If you enjoyed, be sure to smash the like button, comment any corrections on the entries, or anything you'd like to add to them, and your overall thoughts on this down below, and subscribe if you want content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.